Hopefully that didn't come through way too loud. I didn't change the music volume, but it's much louder on my headphone. Hey, Vic. This is, once again, Write Once, Read Many. This time covering chapter 30.5 from Arc 30, Speck. And, the speed draw's already done. This chapter has the... We're going to play the speed draw again. It's the shortest speed draw, I believe, of all the chapter arts for the whole time. Hey, Greg. I like it. It's just this sort of abstract view of Taylor, like, moving everyone with the portals, and there are so, like, abstracted that each cape is just, like, featureless dot. Oh, as the audience participation reminder, it is, what's your favorite cliffhanger from where? Because I think that this is kind of like the ultimate and final cliffhanger. But Vic says, her bugs, as an explanation. So yes, her bugs. I put down the themes as utilitarianism, humanity versus powers, and combos. She's constantly racking up combos. How many new moves can I do in one chapter? The answer, a lot. I did a lot of... I pulled a lot of this stuff and I put it in other sections rather than just having it in my explanation. I was still trying to, like, crunch down, and some of these things I think I maybe even oversimplified, but it's just, like, one of the most action-y chapters of all time. Oh, Vic says also a focus on the well idea. Yeah. I'm going to put that as well. Well of power. Vic says, Taylor really shows her thinker power this chapter. Yeah. That's true, too. Taylor, like, being able to do stuff simultaneously in a way that other people can't, like, makes a meaningful difference. She's like, the door maker can open up portals in like a 30th of a second, but I can just open all of them simultaneously. Because even with the direct door maker power, if he's not being controlled by Taylor, like, he can only do one portal at a time. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that, like, the reason I said utilitarianism is because there's, like, really obvious stuff where she's, like, deciding whether she should do something that she considers more moral or something that she considers more, like, pragmatic. And then there's, like, limits to it. Like, she takes her friends off the table as being people that she's willing to sacrifice, and then it sort of bends back the other way, where she's willing to use Foil because Foil's power is so important. So it's like a push and pull throughout the chapter. And then the humanity versus powers, I actually think, is different than that. I think it's like it's a combination of seeing the different capes um, pushed to their limits and seeing their stressors. Since she can like directly sense them, she can sense their emotions when like Hoyden is afraid, etc. And then there's like she wants to include humanity in terms of like using the all the bombs and stuff that humans have ever made to contribute without having to actually put additional civilians directly into the fight. Um, and she considers anyone who's not superpowered a civilian. So she doesn't literally mean civilians in the way that we would use it in our world, but to her, there's no difference. Vic says each chapter Taylor really overcomes a struggle of a cape she judged in the past. This chapter, she's like, who cares if a villain dies? It's a net good. Like Arm Man. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's very much like Arms Master, but I think that she takes a step further because she doesn't just say it's okay if a villain dies. She literally picks to save one of the, like, on like a small scale, one of the worst villains, and then use a random person who's probably a much better person to be a sacrifice. And then the other level of humanity versus powers beyond the like her trying to bring in the non-powered humans and like the way that she's interpreting the like humanity side of the capes that she's controlling. There's also the idea that she doesn't want to let the Endbringers be the ones to close out the fight. She doesn't want it to come down to like we couldn't have won without the Endbringers because that's not like a strong enough victory to go out on because like you know they're kind of staking everything on this and after they win they're going to still have to rebuild. um Vic says she does save all her besties too, like she judges Gru for. Yeah, that as well. She's really facing every like moral question that she's had throughout the entire story back again in this one arc. Um, she has to, well, not has to. She picks her friends. She, deals with sacrificing people who don't get a choice. Um, she in the past chapters she controlled people and there were like different levels to it where first she was only controlling people she saw as like bad or only controlling people that she saw as like already controlled by someone else, and then in the previous chapter quickly that moved on to being like any type of person except her like closest friends or people who she thought were either like too dangerous or too useful under their own power. But it's a big step from when she thought that Regent controlling one person was already a nightmare. Vic says, and she lost her language and human interpretation, like Rachel. Yeah, well, at first it's kind of like Rachel in the first chapter, and then it gets more and more like further down the track, and it's more like Labyrinth. And then by the end, she's closest to someone like Doormaker. Um, so that is in itself also a sliding scale that you can compare to different people for each kind of step. Um, uh, yeah, so the humanity versus powers, I think there's kind of a lot going there, and I could probably break it down to multiple different themes, but I was thinking it was a stronger thing when you're encompassing all those different types of ideas there. And for the like I agree with what Vic was saying. Like this is all about like trying to tap into like the source of power that Scion has made almost impossible to get to. you can deal damage to his body in, these small fragments, but if they could reach his true body, they could, like, attack the whole thing at once, perhaps. And then, like, we see that despite what has felt like truly limitless amounts of power in the past, Doormaker is brought low this chapter and is nearing the end of his power. And, like, I think there's multiple things that do it, and I'll talk about it later when we get to it. But I think that it's not just that, she's using more total portals. I think that she's just, like, so frequently, like, exponenting how many portals. It's not like, if he had constantly opened new portals, like, sort of one every minute, then that would drain him down. It's like at this point she's opening like hundreds or thousands every second, and opening and closing behind her as she moves and stuff. So it's really like this exponential amount, plus on top of that, really powerful effects keep either hitting or going through portals. Like, I think when Scion's beam, like, direct attacked the portal instead of, going through the portal, that probably did a lot of damage to Doormaker. Anyway, and then the last one, of course, is combos. This chapter and the next chapter are the most combo-heavy chapters in the whole ding-dang book. And we start off the chapter here. Now for the clincher. The ultimate strategy. We ran. I find some of these, like, lines just, like, so comedic still. The book is still funny. Even when everything's really dire. And then, like, radically compressing the top section of the chapter, I said, Taylor buys herself some time by bringing the Ash Beast into her swarm. She needs to get creative, she needs a creative solution to grab him, but it works, and she uses Trickster to teleport him through portals as he engages Scion. Taylor moves a bunch of forces out of Gimel, distributes them all over so that they're in small groups that won't get all wiped out at once. Every cape had a place to be. There were capes who needed something to harvest, who needed materials, and I gave them access to their materials. There were capes who needed others nearby, and capes who were better if set apart. I assigned precogs, thinkers, and danger senses to the various groups. Decentralize, I thought. If Scion was the established force with superior weapons, then I had to be the guerrilla army. Which makes total sense, because she has always been the bug army versus regular humans, and now she is on an even crazier scale, doing the same thing. Running through the short list of capes that she doesn't have, Taylor stumbles over the thought of the cabin with Gru and Cozen, and although she can't actually remember who's in this cabin, I was having trouble remembering why, but I'd trust my older self on that score. Getting back on track, she finds people who can give powers to others and add some extra flight into the mix of the capes fighting right now. And, she's constantly opening and closing portals, getting people in and out of the fight. They, leap forward, do an attack, and leap back. It's like one of those fighting games where you control multiple characters and, like, you can do combos with people who are off screen. They just jump in, do some hits, and they're vulnerable while they're jumping in, technically. But if they can get out of there fast enough, they're fine. So, slamming Scion to the bottom of the bay with a strike from above is, it's a really cool sequence, but I'm not going to hit every detail. Then he pops back out of the water, fires a beam. Taylor tries to redirect this with a portal, like I mentioned in the earlier section about Doormaker's Well. She manages to hit him with his own beam a bit, like even thinking that this would be enough to kill her. But it's mostly dampened by the portal, which is overall destroyed by the shot. After the portal's gone, everyone who was behind it gets got, including Trickster. And, like, Doormaker staggers to the ground and such. I was left with a decision to make. No time to make it. Was I going to be moral or efficient? Taylor decides to leave behind someone with a power that isn't as good at fighting Scion and keep Acid Bath, even though she knows he's evil and sucks. Moving this poor, expendable cape through a portal, she sends one of the teacher's devices that closes off worlds, or closes off all the portals in a world. Vix has honestly put Trickster out of his misery. Yeah, probably at this point. While the fighting continues, Taylor thinks about how she's going to be efficient with the capes under her control. She doesn't want to sacrifice people for no reason, and she thinks about how, like, she doesn't have time to sit down with them and explain why she's sending them into battle. Also decides not to use civilians. As previously mentioned, she thinks of any non-superpowered person as a civilian. But she wants to draw on the strength of the non-capes. Her way of doing this is opening portals to all the largest weapon stockpiles she can find and dropping them all on Scion. She first uses that Tinker device mentioned, then while Scion is focused on decrypting the closed portals, she opens all these things like bomb bay doors above his head. And since Scion kind of has a one-track mind, this actually works, and everything falls in and dunks on him. In this moment, she has a second to herself and thinks, my body was shaking. I wanted to sit down, but I couldn't afford to. I was hungry, I realized, worn out. But I had to capitalize on our advantage here. Had to focus on sorting out my army, so this wasn't for nothing. The overall Yangban structure is broken up at this point. She sort of dismisses all the connections that Null has. She doesn't think having well-rounded cape groups makes sense right now. She needs individual high-level powers to try and pierce Scion's defense and keep him changing and tuning his defenses differently. And so Null is put in the background. And it doesn't mention it here, but I actually think it kind of like retroactively later in the chapter, because she says like he'll be in the background or whatever. I think she already was doing the thing where she links up all the Tinkers at this point, but I'll just wait until they mention it to bring it up. You know how Taylor has secret plans, like that time she knocked out Lung, and it's like, how's she gonna get out of this one? And it just wasn't mentioning her, like, using Neuter's bug, or using a bug on Neuter's blood to, like, transfer that to Lung, and it was all a secret from the reader. I think this is that kind of thing, where it just, the reveal is sort of, like, after it starts. Anyway. Vic says she couldn't think about it too loudly. Exactly. If she thought about it too loudly, Scion would know. He's reading the book just like us. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, so she also has a Tinker give lab rat adjacent formulas to capes who are already most of the way to being able to tank a hit from Scion. Ones who don't wear like armor or whatever. Or who don't like specifically rely on armor. So she doesn't give it to Chevalier because he's got to be able to do his thing, but she does give it to Lung and Menya, just, you know, to get them crazy souped up and probably regenerating and super strength and extra big and all the things that you'd want. But then Legend and Numberman are helping make the range capes all aim perfectly and stuff. Takes Scion a few moments to work out like where he is after he sort of decrypts his way out of that one world, and then find someone to fight. But soon enough, he's going after Glastigüenye again. coordinated range fire goes through, like, to assist her, but Scion manages to dodge everything. And I mean, like, everything. Precogs sense a retaliation, and even with that warning, moving people to safety as best she could, 30 capes are still killed, including Lady Photon and Revel. And then after sort of thinking about that, Taylor has this flashback thought to something that she said in Arc 8. Let's go get him. And this is what she says to Laser Dream and Lady Photon during the fight with Leviathan. It's a rough moment indeed, and this is too. Taylor's able to put together that Scion must have used his version of the Contessa power to dodge all the attacks at once. So even though they hadn't hit him, it was still a meaningful attack. Scion's still screaming, which he's probably been doing continuously for the past few chapters. This reminds Taylor of Scion's human weaknesses. She's able to bait him in by putting capes in his path, because she thinks he's like got really uninhibited rage at this time, Trying to use these capes who are hardy enough to live to be the bait, such as like Lung, etc. Hoyden's being used as a frontliner since she can both take and dish back hits in a way that is like game breaking compared to most other capes. And feeling that her fear, which is pretty deep, and it brings Taylor back to when she was captured by Bakuda, this still only steals Taylor's resolve on this. And then the quote from the book is, "I needed every iota of strength I could squeeze out of these capes." And then Taylor's actively taking in as much data as she can. She's like seeing through Defiant's eyes, seeing his programs and like wireframes. She's seeing through Numberman, all the best precogs. But like there's a problem. She can't focus anything directly on Scion, so she needs to focus on like everything else that will be affected by his actions, and she just keeps like changing the targets of the precogs like constantly every second, so that she's monitoring all these different areas and locations for like what might be coming. And then the next thing that she starts doing is using telekinetics to like push and pull capes through portals faster. Scion's losing his grip as he keeps not quite landing any substantial hits. Like he is landing like glancing blows on people like Chevalier, who can, like, they wouldn't be able to take a full hit from him, but since she's getting them out of the way just in time, it's working. So he's getting hit with so many effects and such that he's actually getting damaged through because he's not attuned to anything. And Taylor even thinks to herself at this point how she needs to, like, she's worried that he's gonna have a shorter fuse now. And sort of fulfilling that prophecy, Scion uses a burst of light that throws off Taylor's rhythm. She feels like the pain of all these capes she's controlling. And the light apparently, it bursts out in all directions and just like goes right through force fields and crap. People were suffering, and so long as they were under my control, they were helpless to express the fear and agony they felt. Instead, they were quietly stoic as their wounds wept fluids and burned with traces of golden light. So, as she's getting healers going, another form of attack from Scion comes up. He claps his hands and stills everything, stopping hearts and blood flow, just full stop on all these capes. And it winks out portals, turns off effects, stuff like that. Taylor tries electric powers to shock them back to life, but when that doesn't work, she dumps Bonesaw with all those victims and removes her control to let Bonesaw work unimpeded. She's like thinking about ways she could maybe use Bonesaw more directly, but it's just like better to let her do her own thing. Scion rips Alexandria / Pretender to pieces, while Taylor thinks about how Scion just used his path to victory power again, so she's on the right track, but she's not doing damage fast enough. If I had 5 times the capes, if we'd been working together like this from the beginning, then maybe. Taylor uses a second wave of gathering all the remaining bombs from all the other worlds and uses her telekinetics to fling it all through portals. She uses Mordnog's scavenger to start eating mass graves of people who have died earlier on in the fighting with Scion. There are plenty, so there's no shortage. Momentarily, lungs start shrinking, reminding her to keep him in proximity to the fight, and she needs to redouble her coordination. Vix says nom nom. And so basically she decides it's inefficient to use the telekinesis people for the majority of her movements. I'm sure she's still going to supplement them in, but she finds she taps into Sifara, who's one of the Tanda leaders, also known as Orbit, who can link objects together. And you may recall this power, allowing them to give chase to Khonsu, be dragged along by his teleports. But now she's connected them to a stone sphere and is turning it in different directions to shuffle people in and out of close range with Scion. So it's getting the way that she's approaching this fight was already really elaborate and abstract because she's 4-dimensionally fighting him through portals and alternate worlds and stuff. And then you add in okay, but what if we weren't maximizing the 3 dimensions? What if we need to add in a new development so that people are zipping around at insane speeds, and then factor in that she's also putting portals in their way, so they're flinging to other dimensions. Oh, there's just so much going on. Taylor's the coolest. And also Wildbow's the coolest, frankly, for writing this chapter. I really think that this is one of the greatest end book fights in anything that I've read. I mean, I think I slightly prefer the Ward ending, but that's fine. Oh no, the sequel was better than the first one. Okay, so as a side project, Labyrinth and Scrub are setting up portals for future attack potential. And she's, because she can leave these static portals that don't use Doormaker. And then she's moving people, in and out with the orbit power, buying time to get another big project going. And then this is where we see that she's using Null to link all the Tinker powers and get them all going on a single project. To find and get to Scion's Well of Power. Vic says, it is a very long fight to keep you engaged the entire time. It's impressive to pull off whole arc fights. Yeah. I mean, there are ebbs and flows, especially earlier on, because she engages Scion a little bit, then she leaves to fight first Taylor, Teacher, and then Dragon, and then Glastigüeñe. But then when she starts fighting Scion at the beginning of this chapter, it's essentially a continuous fight non-stop until the end of the next chapter. Vic also said, as someone who gets so bored reading fight scenes, yeah, I think there's a misconception with people where they're fights in books aren't as good, but I think they're just difficult because the top tier fights in books are kind of so epic that I have a hard time imagining, for example, this being put to screen in a way that feels satisfying. Even even like some of the really like low powers fights in Ward that are like really well done. It's like I would have a hard time imagining the fight having the impact that the written word has, even if they like perfectly express the actions that are happening. Um, Vic says, I also often get bored watching fight scenes. Well, it has to be pretty engaging. Yeah, yeah, that can be a problem. Um, but either way, I really do think that book fight scenes are just really hard to make compelling. Even though I've read so many good ones over the years, it's like it's very easy to miss. Bup, 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 bup. Okay, so yeah, we've got Null linking up, having linked up all the Tinkers, um, and I guess I'll say this bit: a few hundred Tinkers, each with a mix of Tinker powers, all working on a singular project. I could sense it, using the Clairvoyant and Doormaker both, using Labyrinth and Scrub, the solid space between worlds, a space that Scion had altered somehow, blocking off. Facing off against that, I'd had them build something roughly the size of a house. There was a gun built into the construction, but it was snub-nosed, stocky, and unimpressive. I gave Defiant the honor of pulling the switch. The machine whirred to life. Oh, and then I could sense the machine reaching through every available world. The energy was focused on a single space, but it filled that space in each of the worlds. A pressure of sorts started to form. It would take a minute. So she tries to like buy herself more time for this with Mordnog and some of the other heavy hitters. But just before Scavenger can strike out, Mordnog has a stroke. This shocks Taylor, and to keep from freezing up, she like goes from she like first says like I need to think this through in her mind, but then she's getting caught on that, so she's like I need to take action. I need to investigate. So she keeps herself she has to like think around the mindsets that don't work now that she's like half powers. Oh, Vic says Taylor starts leaning into her autopilot, which is basically OP that she can choose how involved or uninvolved she is in her control still. If she gets knocked out, they'd low key keep fighting. Yeah, I think that's true. And it also reminds me of how, uh, like her levels of control and level of being able to put somebody to a task on their own versus like having to release Bonesaw feels like a direct corollary to Alex chapter when we see from his perspective what it's like to let somebody be on autopilot versus to have really direct impact over what they're doing. Um, so it's interesting that she is on basically the same sliding scale, but just for everyone she controls. Yeah, and then we go. I use my ability to read the physical states of the creatures I controlled, reading my swarm much as I'd check a spider's level of hunger, its health, fertility, or amount of venom available. Across almost my entire swarm, people were threatening to lose their minds, literally. And so, feeling the various levels of stress on different types of capes, she like assesses the different people. She moves Mordnog to Panacea for healing and starts to employ Canary's power again, singing through to her swarm to calm them down. And so, yeah, this is like a kind of a wake up call a temporary wake-up call for Taylor. And so, yeah, she sees that Panacea is not working on Mordnog at first, and then Tattletale starts talking to her. So it seems like Panacea is still worried about the brains, and then it's, you still don't use your power on brains? I thought she'd had a setback, creating me. Now the old fear was back in full, at the most inconvenient time. Tattletale was speaking. Her voice was gentle, soft. It was awfully nice to listen to, reassuring, even if I didn't understand the words. Then, breaking me from the spell, Scion moved his hands. Yeah, so, that's a feint from Scion. He instead, sort of on a 4-dimensional trajectory, flies straight for Taylor. It seems that he has used the Path to Victory power again. Vic says, it seems like a lot of Taylor's thoughts in this chapter are being fed to her by her passenger's connection to Scion and the shards. She can kind of hear Scion's thoughts super directly this chapter. Yeah. There's okay, so I think it's multiple things. I do agree that is part of it. I also think that after the point at which she mentions like employing a power like the precogs, that she's mostly doing it all the time. So she's semi-permanently looking at him with like perfect eyes like Legend, with like thinker powers like Numberman. She's like doing this thing where she's constantly alternating who she's looking at with all these indirect precog powers. But I do agree that I think that much in the way that she could sense his disgust in Arc 8 when she first saw him in person, I think that his emotions are bleeding out so strong that she can sense ahead of time when he has killing intent. Like in Hunter x Hunter when they use their Ren. Vic said, she's ascending for real. Essentially bringing herself up to the power of an entity. Yeah. And this is something that I think, like, I keep trying to highlight it in these last few chapters, how she went after these other, like, networked beings, because she is also becoming, like, a networked being, like an entity. And, like, you'll see the theme in Ward of other people, like, sort of like naturally drifting in that direction and like creating different networks of like in various forms, and that it's this like natural inclination that capes have after like a certain point. They fight initially, they have the conflict, but it seems as though a later natural stage of development is trying to reconglomerate all into like one thing. And like, it happens all the time, even in Worm, like the Yang Ban, the way that the Seamerg talks to the other Endbringers also feels like a weird like network thing. I don't know. It just happens a lot. Becoming the scion of a new entity is like definitely a typical parahuman goal. But yeah, so he arcs 4-dimensionally through. Taylor can tell he's used his automatic victory power again, and then she like tries to think like, did he use it to just try and find me, or to find me and kill me? And then I'm actually just gonna do more direct quotes. Was he that complex? Did he think forward to that degree? I ran anyway, turning my attention to the Tinker's machine. And so this is when, looking back after it's had time to like heat up, it doesn't work. There's no way that they have to bust through to the reality with his well of power. And so, um, you know, Taylor's having a bit of a moment. This is a bit of a low point, thinking that she's not going to be able to do anything. Um, and of course, the best means of attack was to go for the weak point, to cut the jugular, to stab the heart, to go for the eyes. Damn it. Um, yeah. And then, she's thinking about how targeting the well had only been a piece of the strategy. Um, and she scatters a bunch of Case 53s around to try and throw off Scion again, but it doesn't work. And then Taylor can't escape fast enough. And she has another, like, flashback uh, moment. Like, she's constantly having them, so I haven't called out all of them. But this this is the trouble with being on top. You're all alone when it counts. Yeah, she's like flashing back to all these points in the story. Um, she tries to put decoys in his way. She keeps trying to escape. Glastigwenya using Eidolon start blasting Scion, but he's still going after Taylor specifically. Mordnog is actually being healed by Panacea at this point. Taylor tries to put Mordnog in the way between her, or at least put Scavenger in the way. But it didn't have time enough between the healing and when she had like brought it to Scion to fully power up, so it just like gets slapped out of the way. Then she thinks of when she cut Echidna in half and uses foil and cuff to make like a razor thin blade for foil to put her power onto, and then she gets all the precogs in one place, and then makes essentially what would be like a Yangban contingent of them, where it's like she still has the Tinkerers all merged, but then she also has a separate merged group of all the precogs. And then when all the precogs are in one place, Dinah's right in front of her, and it kind of like blows her mind. Dinah. I turned her head to see her face, and she saw me in turn. I could see myself in her eyes. I'm sorry. You're different. Which again, like Dinah had said that she saw her in the future in this like end of time moment, but then said, "You're there. You're different." I felt a chill. And so she finally knows what was meant by the "you're different." Oh my god. So many emotional revelations happen in such an action-heavy chapter. Like, I don't know. It's all woven together in a great way. Then we got she sends her away through a portal. And then she sends away Foil, and she sends away Cough and Canary, and puts all of those with Tattletale, who already has, Rachel, Aisha, and Amy there. So it's like truly at the end of the book, Taylor is in charge of a girl gang. Girls only, no boys allowed, and they are some of the baddest motherfuckers around. And then this part I think is worth just reading out also. So this is sentiment? I told myself I'd be logical. Was I succumbing to emotion and impulse, letting her go? Or was I sticking to my rules, my promise that I wouldn't leverage her? Logical, emotional, something else altogether? It didn't matter. I wasn't exactly balanced. I felt very, very off balance, as a matter of fact. But yeah. Then still trying to sense him with the with the precogs. She's doing her best, but it doesn't really do anything. He appears, backhands the big construction they were going to try and cut him in half with, which just disintegrates it. And then he like zooms in to Taylor while he's like moving up to her. She's looking at her friends. I saw Imp's lips move. She was saying something. It was probably very clever, something funny and witty and totally out of place. Or maybe she was saying the same thing I'd said when I'd parted ways with the group as a whole. Rachel was silent, but she sort of dropped to her knees behind a giant monster-fied bastard who was lying on his side, her arms wrapped around his neck, and Tattletale. She put her hand to her mouth, then sort of made a sweeping gesture with her arm. It dawned on me that I had no idea what the gesture meant. Because you can't let me have even that, I thought. And with Scion moving in, he grabs her by the neck with his normal ass hand, which is apparently slightly bigger than a normal person, but like very much human sized hand, which, they keep being shocked because even with the Endbringers, who were they're huge, but they feel small to fight given how outsized their power is. And then to have like an order of magnitude higher, or like 2 orders of magnitude or something, compressed into a regular human-sized package was like a whole crazy detail. But yeah, Taylor's thinking about how while Scion had hidden away all of his weak points and hidden away his body in an inaccessible world, when they were analyzing the humans as a whole, they like looked into what strategies they could like employ, and one of the things that like seemed like it wasn't a possibility is to have everyone working together, a la Taylor. And so like the mistake was that he couldn't predict a future where they were all working together. Vic says, this reminded me of one of the scenes in Lost Records. Yes. See you in hell. That game. The writing of the song in that game was so... It made me want to like cringe, like fold backwards outside of myself, out of reality. That would be my power. Would be to be so filled with the emotion of cringe that I simply like back out of reality. Vix's Cat and Taylor ain't so different. Oh, Taylor's better than Cat. Come on. You're being real mean to our girl. Let's see here. So yeah, I think this is good when she's thinking back to like what Scion would have anticipated and not anticipated. And then another thing, I know I'm just reading from the chapter a bunch, but who cares? We're at the end of the book. Like, it's 2 dints. I tried to... He'd made one mistake I knew of. He had predicted a future where he would meet his partner and then pursued that future, only to meet the brain-dead version of that was in Cauldron's base. I'd tried to help the same happen for the other future, running, using the dimension encryption. They were the best thing I could come up with in terms of putting Scion in a world where he saw himself as the only one standing. Also, I do think that that's an okay plan, is like, oh, he wants to path to victory to where he's the only guy on the battlefield. Well, here you go. But yeah, that's all she can think of with that. She thinks about like teleporting herself out of the way before she gets grabbed, but she doesn't. And then she's sort of shocked that he didn't kill her right away, and I think correctly interprets he wants me to show fear. It's like a broken up thought, as many of hers are. And then he like pulls her through fourth dimensionally, like he's been moving, which is like she already feels like her mind is slipping, but then she feels like she's slipping between realities. I think it's like just another good thing of reality began to dim around the edges as oxygen deprivation got me slipping. And then yeah, she thinks about how she'd had her plan. She'd need to trick his future sight. She'd need to get everyone together, and she'd need to target his weak point, but she hadn't been able to get to his weak point. And then she's like lamenting that she only came up with like the final plan after she lost her ability to communicate. She sees Tattletale saying something to Panacea, and then Panacea is working on Bastard right now. And then Foil moves like she's gonna like aim at Scion, and then Taylor stops her by like putting a bug barrier to be like, no, don't, because that's her best form of communication now. And then she thinks how it wouldn't work anyway, but then Scion's about to blast them because you know he sees all. And then you know, he's still holding on to Taylor, about to blast at her friends, but then she does she like tries to shut the connection between where they are and where Scion is, but it doesn't work. He just steps through again. And then Foil is about to try and shoot Scion. He doesn't like super kill her, which is like a mistake on his part. He blows up her weapon, which destroys her hand seemingly. Maybe not like, you know, he doesn't Scion blast her hand off. It's like if a crossbow was in your hand and exploded. And then Taylor's trying to think of any last minute thing. She's getting like super desperate. She even thinks of like, can Dinah help somehow? She looks over at Dinah, and Dinah is like in the fetal position or whatever. And then for her, the walls must really feel like they're closing in, because Taylor probably finds like the one outcome where they don't all get killed. And then she tries to do the same trick she did two previous times, where she has all the ranged capes all fire at the same time so that Scion will move out of the way. She uses Number Man to calculate and aim the shot and everything. But this time it changes. It's not like before. Everything hits, like everything. And she manages to even like not, like they don't hit any of her friends or herself, but it blasts Scion. And she's like knocked off her feet. Another moment where like the clairvoyant is like injured in a way that really hurts, and she's like, well, good thing I have complete control over him. And then she's like trying to think to herself, like, why did he get hit this time? And she realizes literally the only attack that wasn't in this mix that had been in the previous ones was Foil. And so he has her power into a rock, instantly brings Ballistic through a portal, launches the rock at him, and then he has the automatic reflexive use of the Path to Victory power. And so she's forced him to use it once again, and then now she knows where it's coming from. They retreat. Everybody, you know, she was she's moving capes in his way. Um, Bonesaw's bringing capes back to life, but at this point, like having a few more is barely any different for Taylor. And then she's worried that if Scion is freed up for even a few moments, he'll just go right back to attacking her directly. And then she sort of gets caught in a mental loop, has to like shake herself out of it, and Tattletale notices, and Tattletale's commenting something to Panacea, who probably conveys that she's not done working on Bastard, and then Imp makes a joke. And then Taylor has another moment of like, oh no, all those other times that using the clairvoyance power kind of threw me off, and I was like, it's all like a blurring watercolor. That, but worse, and again. And then at this point, the clairvoyant has become a drugs metaphor, because it was only giving me the ability to function at this rate. I could turn my attention, so as she uses it more, she doesn't get as high anymore. Oh, Taylor, you're just using the clairvoyant to numb your pain. But yeah, I was losing it. I was almost out of time. The certainty I felt in that was enough to kick me into action. So she changes what she's doing with the Tinkers. She's having them make a new thing. It is almost certainly the thing that fires off in the next chapter, which, small spoilers, it's a way to bore through the dimensions and break through Scion's block to his well of power. Vic says, at this point, the clairvoyant starts doing drugs. Yeah. He cracks open a cold one. Disgusting. Yeah, definitely. And she has she has yet more insight. I collected some capes that were harder to employ, and I began pairing them up. Halo, Sundancer, a handful of masters with projection powers, a cape with a giant mask. All powers that made stuff. And then she makes a weird edifice, and then she blows up the size of it to be huge with Vista. She puts Chevalier in the mix. He's got his cannon blade, all giant. She pulls all the capes out of the way, and then she shoots at Scion with the sun and the laser fire, and then he dodges that, but dodges it into the way of Chevalier's weapon, which is gigantic, and then he kerblams Scion with a spot on perfect shot. We always knew that he'd make the perfect shot in the end, and it hits Scion through the Sundancer sun, and then bursts through all that, and then all the Endbringers fucking pop out at once, which this moment in slow-mo would be fucking epic in a movie. The Seamerg plunged from the clouds, hitting Scion. Leviathan, healed a touch, emerged from the water. Bohu rose from the earth, going from a human-sized head and shoulders at eye level to a tower. Tohu, for her part, had Glastigwenye, Eidolon, and Myrden's faces. The Endbringers, come to the rescue. I wished I could have felt relieved. It was a reprieve, a chance to get our footing, but there was an ominousness to it. Like I'd told Dr. Mother, I reached for the memory. It's humans who win this, not something abstract, not something we don't understand. We win this with our own strength, even if I had to make us. And then so she brings her army through to this battlefield yet again. keeping them connected with Sephara Orbit's power. And then uh, and then the Tinkers are still finishing the gun, as she puts it. But she's got the rest of her army, and she's about to do another huge like Numberman barrage thing, and right before she fires, she gets distracted. Instead, I watched as Scion's partner came to life. There was only one growth at first, like a stem, a human-sized body, pure white. The rest bloomed forth beneath it, a garden of body parts, hands, stretches of flesh, a maze of parts, all interconnected, all flowing from the piece in the center. All of it alive. This time, the garden, as Golem had said. Hands turned to gesture, and flames rose from fingertips. A moment later, ice, experimenting, testing powers. Then it spoke, a soft voice that somehow seemed familiar. Scion's companion had been gray. This one was white. This wasn't it. A third entity? I stared, my blood running cold. Scion tried to float down to it, fighting almost tooth and nail with the Endbringers to get to his new companion. Even in the midst of the fighting, the mood was entirely different. The rage had given way, gone. I could sense shock, bewilderment. He reached out, almost as if he were afraid to touch it, to touch her. Where had it come from? I used the clairvoyant, tracing it back to the origin point. I realized at the same moment Scion did. Our emotions at our simultaneous realizations couldn't have been more different. And so, she realizes that the big growing field of flesh, that this new garden, the third entity, if Scion's gold and Eden is silver, Bastard is white, I guess. Because he's made of bone. They had injected lab rat formula into Bastard. They had used Panacea to affect how the growth would be so that he would come up as basically like an Eden-looking motherfucker. And then this was perhaps another like path to victory, like success theoretically, where Scion found another entity, but it was yet again not one. And so, knowing that this is not going to go over well with Taylor, she like zips everyone out of that reality with Sephara's power, and she like throws a whole bunch of Case 53s between the Tattletale group and Scion to throw off the scent trails. And then apparently Scion has like destroyed the land shelf that New Brockton Bay was on, which is obviously bad. And because the cabin to which Taylor cannot look is still here, then she pulls Ziggurat into the area, and she like throws up a bunch of earthen walls, perhaps even underground, but she just saves the area from being completely devastated using that. Apparently the cracks stopped 20 feet short of the cabin, so she really held it back at the last minute. But at this point, Taylor's like totally out of sorts. She's trying to fight on an instinctual level, and she's like reaching out to move everybody and coordinate again, but she opens a door in front of her, and then, oh no, this is when things have gone wrong. All of the doormaker doors that are open start winking out one by one, and in order from like furthest to closest, but furthest is kind of a weird concept in this sort of four-dimensional thing. But But yeah, they go from furthest out to closest in, and then she realizes as all the doors are going that I'd spent it all. Too much. Pushing it too far. The well Doormaker drew from in using his power had just run dry. Bum, bum, bum! Again, cliffhanger of all cliffhangers. I do think that this is probably the biggest cliffhanger in the entire book, just given how dramatic, given how important, the stakes of things. You get it. But yeah, I love it. I love the chapter. On my final chapter thoughts, I just copy pasted the "let's go get that, let's go get him." I think that sums up Taylor's whole affect this chapter. She's trying to be respectful, but she's got a job to do. Yeah, again, final chapter thoughts. Like, it's one of the greatest book fights I've ever read. Really incredible. Like, I think that this is a book full of good fights, and this is, like, probably the best one. Yeah. It's just, like, my brain can visualize so much of it, and, like, can sort of do, like, a fourth dimensional thing where, like, I can imagine them moving through. Like, yeah, I've got a really, really good idea in my mind of what this is like. It really, really paints a picture. So, that's excellent. As for arc stuff, what did I write? I said, the slide during this arc has been so fast. Last chapter, Taylor went from justifying that she was only controlling people who were being controlled to controlling almost everyone except her close friends in a single chapter. Now she's sacrificing some shapeshifter guy instead of acid bath, powering up Mordnog's spirit by eating mass graves from previous fights. She sees the toll it takes on people she's controlling, from the fear and pain they feel all the way to the stroke Mordnog ends up having. Not only does she not stop, but she incorporates Foil into the mix and into her crowd. So, and like Cuff, so and Canary. So even like 3 of her closest homies who she was like hiding away. But she, doesn't cross some lines. Once she realizes she's controlling Dinah, she's like, "Oh, gotta throw her back. I didn't mean to catch that fish. I gotta throw it back in the lake." Yeah. And I guess other arc stuff. There are 2 remaining chapters in this arc. There are but 2 remaining main series chapters, and then we'll hit the epilogue. I know I'm saying this like every week now, but it just keeps hitting me. Oh my god, we have come so far to get... I can't believe that this stream has actually reached the end of the book. It's wild. Yeah. Crazy. So for the characters section, I kind of put in everybody who was mentioned directly by name, even if they don't really get any characterization. Actually, I didn't put in teacher because they say, like, teacher's device, but, like, teacher wasn't here. Close enough. So for Scion, that's right, he's on the board. He counts as a character at this point. He is no longer just a set piece. Yeah, I pulled some quotes here. Scion was screaming, still, a roar, a kind of fury. Scion's rage was reaching a crescendo. The screaming was increasing in volume and intensity, the movements more aggressive, the attacks broader, less focused. A fist flew past Chevalier, followed by a blast that might have wiped out a neighborhood if Capes had been in a city. Or if the Capes had been in a city. He was grazing Capes, failing to land a single heavy blow, and it was pissing him off. He was roaring as he did it, teeth bared, face contorted. And then I already read this out just recently, but it was the when Scion had floated down, like still fighting all the Endbringers. All he could focus on was the fake third entity, um, and how it switched. It was the he reached out almost as if he were afraid to touch her. Scion howled, not a scream of rage this time, something else. Scion's mad sorrow was so thick on the air, I could almost taste it. Yeah, see, that's another one of her being, like, in tune with him. It's like, he may be shouting and going crazy, but he's also just projecting through. Oh my word. A chatter has entered the chat. I believe this is Kevin of was on the stream before, back in way earlier Arc fame. So hey Kevin. Scion gets upgraded to character because he finally gets his trauma. Yeah. This is like his. Well, I feel like the other ones, like when he went through his other trials and tribulations up to this point, those were all like near misses on a trigger event, and then this is him finally having a trigger event when he gets like triple whammied. This is the third time he thought that he was gonna get to save like the second entity and get paired off. Yeah. So, Scion, he's just fully on the brink. It's being emphasized over and over again that he's like got his human weaknesses. He's finally able to be like directly baited. Like if we recall when Taylor was able to use swarm clones to distract him, it feels like he's that was because he was being like early dumb Scion, but this is like his wrapped back around. He's gone from like I don't care about decoys to like I'll fall for every decoy. So yeah, he is raw, unfiltered, lowest moment so far in his Scion life. Not doing good. Moving on to this small category, I put Contessa, Blasphemies, Sleeper. These were the three listed groups, aside from the Gru Kozin contingent, that had intentionally not been brought to the battle. I have this section. The ordering of the characters would seem a bit odd at first until you realize this whole next section is just the Capes who directly died on screen. We've got Ash Beast. The only like little bit we know about his character is more like the way that Taylor views him. She was like surprised at first to be like, oh yeah, there's still like a core human to this, like just a dude. He's not just like an effect that's ongoing. But she thinks about him. I'd use him first. If he died, the world wasn't worse off for it. If he lived, well, I could discard him, leaving him in a foreign earth. It's so cruel. I know he's a destructive parahuman who they have a hard time getting to not blow people up. But, I feel bad for the Ash Beast. And it puts me in the state of mind of, like, Picard trying to justify why the crystalline entity is not inherently evil, even though it eats people. It's not Ash Beast's fault. Alright, we got Trickster. Basically went from permanently being a teacher thrall to permanently being under Taylor's control. Kind of just trading one thing for the other. Boop. Othala. She was a bad guy, but she had a kind of cool power, and she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. We've got the gavel-alike cape with the pole who strikes Scion down into the bay. We all give him a little salute. got a cool, really strong seeming power to be able to like knock Scion around like that, but he is gone in an instant, just like those others. We've got unnamed shapeshifter. We salute you, unnamed shapeshifter. You were able to close the door on Scion and leave him in a state where it seemed like he was the only one in the world. Lady Photon and Revel, you along with like 28 other people were just like complete accidental casualty because of too fast of a retaliation, not sacrificed on purpose. We salute you. Pretender as Alexandria, I pulled this quote. He was tearing into Alexandria, literally, but she doggedly held on, delivering one crushing blow for every pound of flesh Scion ripped from her midsection. So you know what? Pretender was doing it till the last second. He was fighting hard. We got to again give him our little salutes. So, you know, all who have fallen in this fight, you deserve to be on the memorial plaque that we make later. And then I listed the characters who are mentioned who probably don't die, but maybe some of them do. I don't know. I don't think any of these characters get killed on screen. We've got the Crawler breed hybrid. Note, I did in not some super official ranking, but in like a very unofficial way, essentially rank them from evil to good. Oh, Kevin says, to be fair, Taylor is probably not entirely sure either. There you go. Yeah, we're on the same page. Nobody knows which one of these guys died. But there's a Crawler breed hybrid, which I determined to be the most, like, basely evil thing here. As evil as Bonesaw is for creating that thing, it's basically just a demon. So we noticed this demon on the field. We got Bonesaw helping out, the Blue Woman, or the Blue Empress, you know, the woman who had controlled her own world. For Bonesaw, I'll say Bonesaw deserves actually being talked about for a second. She did, you know, after Taylor drops her off and decides she is, like, less good at using Bonesaw's power than just leaving Bonesaw to do whatever she wants. Like, that's a rare thing for Taylor to decide, like, you are so good at what you do, I'm not even going to try and control you. I, the ultimate micromanager of the universe, will not micromanage you. So, thumbs up to Bonesaw and her awful work. Then we got Mordnog, important key point, incredibly powerful cape that, you know, Taylor would focus on and try to use over and over again. She becomes the center of sort of a, like, blink and you miss it moral dilemma of, like, just Taylor kind of, and again, like, I don't even know that I disagree with, like, using the bodies of the fallen to power up the scavenger, but Taylor doesn't even think about it, and she's the one who's the most like, I can't believe you would sacrifice people to Mordnog. Like, you know, that whole thing in Arc 25. So Mordnog has that going on, then she's the one who has the stroke, and it kind of brings up, like, Taylor thinks she might have, like, a phobia that has directly to do, or, like, a trauma directly to do with being controlled. And, like, when she's thinking through all of the people who are having the hardest time with it, it's like the masters are having the hardest time and the thinkers are having the easiest time, because masters are, like, control freaks and thinkers are able to, like, be in their own head more, I guess. And then it's kind of a sliding scale from there as well. Who else do we got? We got Menya. Menya got dosed with some super tinker formula and thrown in the front line to space warp and hopefully survive. Menya's one of the ones where I'm like, I don't know. She very, very likely could have died. I don't think we hear about her later, and I think Taylor was using her as a frontliner. Acid Bath. Bad dude. Also, I think it's funny. the reason, so I ranked Bonesaw as the next most evil after the demon, and then the Blue Empress because she took over a whole world. That's right, Bonesaw is even more evil than taking over a whole world because she's like such a weird torture murderer. Um, Mord Nog, she only took over one country, so it's not as bad. Menya's the next worst because she's a racist. Um, then Acid Bath. I had a hard time between Acid Bath and Menya because I'm like, well, Acid Bath's still really bad. And then I was like, as bad as he is, he didn't seem like a racist at least. Or at least not an open one. I don't know. Then we've got Lung. Lung is better than Acid Bath. Lung is evil and does a lot of bad stuff, but Acid Bath is like a pretty despicable character from the little we see of him. Lung doesn't get a say in this, but it's interesting that he's used to determine, like, oh, well, I need to be, like, keeping him closer to the fight, and it makes Taylor realize she's got to control even more. More control. Then I wrote down, Number Man. Despite everything, I think Number Man is slightly less evil. He's in that, like, morally gray territory. I just think he's, like, what is it? I think I'm using the word amoral correctly here. He's not like immoral, like actively evil. He's like amoral, where he's like standing outside of morality and he doesn't see either the morality or immorality of any actions per se. So he's still in the slightly evil side of things. Number Man is used as a direct tool. He gets no characterization here. That's fine. Many such cases. Glastigüenye / Eidolon Shade. We do learn that Glastigüenye would probably be more effective if Taylor wasn't controlling her, or if they had time to sort of work together to get Taylor controlling her better. But Taylor can't release control of her because while you can release Bonesaw and Bonesaw will keep like fixing people, Glastigüenye is so like pride first that I think Taylor is right to be like, I can't trust that she's not going to snipe me. And if they snipe Taylor at this point, it'd be over. Eidolon Shade. It's good to keep seeing that Eidolon will continue to be like pulled out as like peak power kind of thing. Next I got Null and Zero. No real characterization again, like Number Man, like Legend, all these other people in this chapter, but really great use of the idea of this character to make a tinker block and a precog block, because it can be hard to get tinkers to work on the same page, but if they all have just a little tinker from every discipline, then it probably actually is an amazing use of the power. I feel like even outside of a situation like this, that's actually one of the best versions of using Null's power. Ballistic, minor mention, just pulled in for a single attack with a foil infused object. Ziggurat, jumps in for the save to save the cabin. Scrub, Labyrinth, being used to open up portals just on the off chance that they end up being useful. Orbit, obviously, has the chance to shine, like incredible use, incredibly powerful, beautiful, we love it. Defiant, again, he gets to throw the switch. We get a little character moment where we get to see through his helmet and see his essentially attempted a precog program. Mention of Minor Cape Halo. She's back. Some Vietnamese tinker who is unnamed, but I was like, I'm going to talk about him anyway. Sun Dancer, only used for the sun. Too much of a beta to need to hear about her personality. Gentle Giant is here. Ursa Aurora. Victoria, I think. They mentioned someone with a force field super strength, and I'm like, yeah, they specifically mentioned pulling Victoria from the asylum in the previous chapter. And I do believe she features again next chapter before the fight is over, just like one time. We got Legend, of course. He's looking, he's blasting. For Hoyden, I actually pulled out some stuff. Hoyden's fear was like the scared little girl fear I'd experienced while concussed, racked with pain and helpless at Bakuta's feet. But she could hit Scion, and I needed people who could hit him. I needed every iota of strength I could squeeze out of these capes. Yeah. It's just another, like, you know, we think of Hoyden as this, like, boisterous, like foul-mouthed cape who loves a fight. But she's just like, oh my god, get me out of here. Chevalier, we got to, I like this. It's just a classic, like, you know, he pushed through anyway kind of moment. Chevalier's weapon should have been too heavy to lift, but he didn't seem to care. He shot Scion, and Scion was consumed by the sun. Vista just gets like a drop-in moment to like supersize a bunch of constructions. Always great fun. And then the Clairvoyant and Doormaker. They got hurt, but have stayed attached to Taylor. It's still working. And then I have a little tiny gap here. This next group is all the people Taylor really was focused on keeping safe. I put Gru/Cozen, even though we never see them. They are the theoretical people inside the cabin that Taylor can't look at. She can't remember who Gru is, but she wants to give him a little kiss. Canary, you know, she's still being used to soothe Taylor's warriors until Taylor feels like she has to shut away the people she wants to keep safe, and then she sort of tries to press on without Canary for the last part of the chapter. Cuff, she almost gets used in this cuff foil technique, real fun stuff, but then Taylor decides that she's got to save Cuff in the Spirited Away zone with Tattletale. It's so funny because she does not dump Golem in the safe zone, she only dumps Cuff. She's like, this is a no boys allowed space. Parian doesn't get a chance to really do that much, although she had been using her for some baseline telekinesis along with like the other telekinetics to pull and push people. Foil, obviously, like, deeply important. We learn, we as the audience know that Foil has the, like, sting power, because when Scion is going through his, like, ancient memories of the first being that decided to have all the entities cooperate and leave their home planet, that they were fighting each other with sting, and that is a meaningful attack that can hit Scion in every world. And so, while we already know that her power is pretty key to this, and we know that she has a really powerful thing, this allows Taylor to work out what the audience knows. The dramatic irony has been squared. We now understand why Scion doesn't bother dodging the third salvo of all remaining ranged powers. Boop, boop, boop. And then other stuff. I'm sure that this is stressing Foil the fuck out, because as we, like, one thing we kind of know about Foil from like Ward flashbacks and conversations is that she is not actually able to deal with these high stress situations as well as she'd like. She gets worse and worse over time at putting up with all the insane shit. So I'd imagine she's having a bad time. For Panacea, I pulled this quote. I know I already read it earlier, but she'd had a setback creating me. Now the old fear was back in full at the most inconvenient time. And then Dinah, I was succumbing to emotion and impulse. Or, sorry, was I succumbing to emotion and impulse, letting her go? Or was I sticking to my rules, my promise that I wouldn't leverage her? Logical, emotional, something else altogether? It didn't matter. I wasn't exactly balanced. I felt very, very off balance, as a matter of fact. Yeah, Dinah, she, like, snaps herself out of her, like, what she had been doing to realize that she needs to have Dinah kind of as an anchor and to not use Dinah following back in the old sort of treads of being actual Taylor, you know? Oh, Kevin says, got a dip. Super excited you made it to the end. Yeah, yeah. And I do plan to, keep doing these weekly again. I'm not, I'm trying to not take any more weeks off until at least the end of Worm, and then we will continue into Ward. So, it's always fun when you drop by, etc. And I'll see you next time. Let's see here. Yeah, but Dinah, like in her in the last moments, we see her when she thinks like everything's over, that just before she sees Taylor being different, then she's sort of like devastated and back to the fetal position, like when Taylor first saw her. And then we got Rachel and Bastard. I pulled out the quote where Rachel was like hugging Bastard, but it's because she knows he's about to be used as this decoy, and she allows it to happen. She's able to like bring herself to a place where she's like, Bastard may be killed, but if that happens, like, I'm willingly going forward into this plan, like with eyes wide open. With Rachel, she's still quipping, she's still saying things, and it's hard to know if Imp has a like perfectly like genial attitude, or if she's like saying goodbye to the group. At some of the points, she's still got a wry smile a little later on, but or maybe she was saying the same thing I'd said when I'd parted ways with the group as a whole. Like, I don't know, that works for me. I think it hits hard enough. Aisha sticking with the group till the end. She's a true undersider. For Tattletale, we got Tattletale was speaking. Her voice was gentle, soft. It was awfully nice to listen to. Reassuring, even if I didn't understand the words. This is so sad. And like when she can't read Tattletale's gesture, I don't know. I think to me, Tattletale Taylor is like the closest relationship in this book. I think it's the most important friendship, even more important than Rachel. More important than the way that Aisha looks up to Taylor in, the post-time skip stuff. Yeah. Tattletale, we love you. You came up with a great plan. Taylor had been thinking about how she was trying to lead Scion to a false conclusion and defeat him that way. And then right after she thinks about that, then Tattletale like busts out the fake third entity. And she had already been setting up that plan. So it's like they were in alignment even when they couldn't communicate at all. Sad. And then for Taylor, I wrote, the whole thing where people joke about how many times Taylor thinks about how she could use other people's powers better than they could. I think that in most cases she's probably right, as proven by this insane overall battle. I have a poll quote here. Those boundaries had been to protect myself, as selfless as they might have seemed. This was to protect others. This was good. Better. And then I also wrote that a lot of truths spill forth from Taylor and to us, the audience, from Taylor. Even if it's stuff we already like understood about her, she actually like puts words to some stuff, like what she's willing to sacrifice or not, etc. And then there's this part that I thought was important, which was the mental stutter wasn't there, but the stutter only tended to hit me when I thought about nice things, about peace and familiar people, and all the rest of that stuff. Then I wrote, Taylor's most powerful moments always come at her lowest points. So obviously, she just had to drive herself to a new low she's never felt before, and voila, she's more powerful too. That was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's also not far from the truth. The best means of attack was to go for the weak point, to cut the jugular, to stab the heart, to go for the eyes, damn it. Classic Taylor moments. As before, it was in the quiet moments that I realized how much I'd lost during the action. I'd been slipping, my vision getting narrower. And I think that, of course, doesn't just mean the clairvoyance vision as much as she might only be saying it about that. I think that it is clearly, it can be said about her whole everything right now. She's like losing sight of things. She's getting tunnel vision. Oh, and then powers, knowledge, and world building. I put, yeah, I'm done with the characters section. Moving on. But, oh, Taylor, we're losing you. I put Legend and Ashby seem to have a similar healing through their breaker power, converting energy and matter back and forth to keep renewing their body. And I thought that was cool. Then there's the part, I guess this has like several things I wanted to read out. That's why I didn't clip any of it off. When she goes, right, Othala. She could give someone else flight. Send the right people to Scion's vicinity. Trickster, some defensive capes. One of the capes who had served under the Blue Woman in that cape-ruled alternate Earth. He had a power not unlike Gavel's. Glastic Wenye offered some offensive power as well, but it was tricky and time-consuming to dig for the capes I could use. She knew them personally. I had to find them. This is just sort of an example of like how many things were going on moment to moment during the chapter. This was the Vietnamese tinker. He had the lab rat thing. Formulas to boost strength and size, turning regular people into hulking monsters. I put him to work, dosing capes who weren't reliant on armor or anything of the sort. I left Chevalier alone, and left the crawler breed hybrid be, but I dosed Lung and Menya. And there's the Legend and Numberman joining the range capes. I love the telekinetics part, where they're zinging people in and out of things. Oh yeah, and then this part about the stilling, I really like the wording on it. One strike of palm against palm, and the shockwave swept past us as if in slow motion, moving past every portal in the area that was still open. It passed through flesh, and it stilled. It was the same effect he'd used to quiet Leviathan's waves, the same effect that had frozen floodwaters in their tracks, and the same ability that had given him so much presence. Objects in motion stopped. Portals winked out. Warm things plummeted in temperature. Cell and neural activity was interrupted. Blood stopped in people's veins. Every cape that had been touched by this stillness dropped to the ground, lifeless. Yeah, awesome. Great use of a power. Reusing something we saw ages and ages ago back in Arc 8. Or even in Arc 1, if you think of him like stilling the fires in the old footage in the documentary. But and here I had like, I'd collected all the Tinkers in one place and I'd put them on autopilot, a vague, nebulous goal in mind. To get them working together, I'd use 0 of the Yangban to tie them together as a group, splitting their powers. A few hundred Tinkers, each with a mix of Tinker powers, all working on a singular project. I could sense it, using the Clairvoyant and Doormaker both, using Labyrinth and Scrub, the solid space between worlds, a space that Scion had altered somehow, blocking off. And then sort of a follow-up from later in the chapter. The gibberish text on the screen had turned red. Failure. The combined strength of all the Tinkers who remained, Bonesaw accepted, and it had failed. There was no way to get to the space Scion had sealed off. No way to his well. where he drew all of his resources from. And then we've got it was stress, a factor I hadn't taken into account. I controlled their bodies, but I didn't control their minds. They were bystanders, watching this all unfold, and even though I regulated their heartbeats, kept their breathing level, the mental stress accumulated. There were exceptions in every category, but I could assess my gathered army with broad strokes of the brush. The thinkers were coping best, the tinkers nearly as well. The masters struggled the most, followed by the shakers and breakers. The rest fell in some middle ground. Mord Nog, my control over her had apparently tapped into some kind of trauma or phobia she had, so she'd been the first to reach some kind of fever pitch in terms of buildup of stress-induced chemicals and reactions. I was killing my own minions. And then sort of slightly lower, I brought Canary to me, and she began singing, a high, sweet song, almost like a lullaby, her voice carrying through the same portals that connected me to my underlings. And then, of course, one of the hypest moments of all time for me, which was the moment the Endbringers made their move. The Seamerg plunged from the clouds, hitting Scion. Leviathan, healed a touch, emerged from the water. Bohu rose from the earth, going from a human-sized head and shoulders at eye level to a tower. Tohu, for her part, had glassed Igwenye, Eidolon, and Mirdan's faces. The Endbringers come to the rescuer. I wished I could have felt relieved. It was a reprieve, a chance to get our footing, but there was an ominousness to it, like I'd told Dr. Mother. It's humans who win this, not something abstract, not something we don't understand. We win this with our own strength, even if I had to make us. Like, that could have also been where the chapter ended, frankly. Vic said, I can imagine thinkers and tinkers responding better because they're used to giving themselves over to their passengers. Yeah, and I thought, like, a lot of what they do, they're not, like, running around to do it. They're kind of, like, yeah, they're in, like, a flow state, like what you're saying. So that's probably it. And then I had actually kind of thought that movers might have been on the list for people doing especially bad because they wouldn't like to be controlled. They like to, like, escape all the time. But I guess not. I think that Shakers and Masters in particular, though, have, like, control issues. This is another, just, I know I read this earlier, but all of these lines are, like, awesome. I watched as Scion's partner came to life. There was only one growth at first, like a stem, a human-sized body, pure white. The rest bloomed forth beneath it, a garden of body parts, hands, stretches of flesh, a maze of parts, all interconnected, all flowing from the piece in the center, all of it alive this time. The garden, as Golem had said. Hands turned to gesture, and flames rose from fingertips. A moment later, ice, experimenting, testing powers. Then it spoke, a soft voice that somehow seemed familiar. Scion's companion had been gray. This one was white. This wasn't it. A third entity? I stared, my blood running cold. And yeah, that rules. That, like, as a fake out for Taylor, that's awesome. And you can, like, kind of put together what's happening, maybe, if you're, like, really paying attention to the stuff with Tattletale, Panacea, and Rachel. But he'd made one mistake I knew of. He had predicted a future where he would meet his partner and then pursued that future, only to meet the brain-dead version that was in Cauldron's base. I'd tried to help the same happen for the other future. Running using the dimension encryption, they were the best thing I could come up with in terms of putting Scion in a world where he saw himself as the only one standing. Jumping down a bit later, the third entity was Bastard, the wolf cub, grown large by the bizarre interaction of Labrat's formula, and then cosmetically altered by Panacea, given a handful of special effects, no doubt coordinated by Tattletale. And I have to imagine that this was another use of the, like, Path to Victory power, because Tattletale so perfectly tricked him. Scattering them to different worlds with portals, I used Case 53s to break the so-called scent trail to Tattletale and the others. And this was from way earlier, but I still brought it down. It was I slammed the portals around the cape shut, and I opened another portal larger to take in the beam. The beam hit the surface of the portal, and only a fraction passed through to strike Scion from behind. Enough to kill someone, enough to kill me if the beam had happened to touch any of my control portals. But, even so, the portal itself took the brunt of the impact. Doormaker staggered beside me. The portal was wiped out. And then, the final bit of the chapter, I reached out to seize everyone, opening full-size doorways so I could move them all to one place. It was when I was opening my door that the portal started winking out. It was like watching a blackout take hold over a city. Lights going out, sections of apartments at the same time, then buildings. Not all even, not quite logical in flow, but close. And with every other light that went out, I lost a member of my swarm. The portals shut en masse, 10 by 10, 100 by 100, furthest ones first. The ones next to me would disappear in seconds. I looked at Doormaker, who was staring into empty space. The realization dawned on me. I'd spent it all. Too much. Pushing it too far. The well Doormaker drew from in using his power had just run dry. And then my own quote. I've been doing the absolute most for too long. Taylor, talking about Doormaker, probably. And that's the end of what I've got pulled out for the powers section. I'm going to do the audience participation. What's your favorite cliffhanger from Worm? And Vic says, I had a self-imposed cliffhanger, or I think I had a self-imposed cliffhanger right before the time skipped, and that was pretty lit. There was a big separation for me between her being a villain versus hero. Yeah, I agree. That's a pretty big cliffhanger. I think my next favorite cliffhanger after this one is at the end of Arc 21 when she turns herself in before the start of Arc 22 Cell, where, she's in the cell. So I think that's a really good cliffhanger. A bit of a quick one on the discussion there. As far as the question for the next chapter, What do I even ask? I don't know. Hopefully I'll come up with a question before I actually do the next stream, but I don't feel an inspiration now. I can tell when I do, and I can tell when I don't. And so what I'm going to do is end the stream. I am once again so glad that we've made our way all this way to the last arc. 2 more Taylor chapters remain. My word. I am pretty excited that we're at the end. I love this book, but it's cool to complete things. The music you're hearing is Speck by our good friend ScarlettXOX. You can find her work at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. I don't know how much she's going to be streaming, but she kind of got her stuff together and did some. Start the speed draw again. Our Discord server, as well as our other links, can be found in the stream description and the channel description. Also, technically the music link, but the reason I say the thing on the Discord thing is because I can't read out the link, and because it's actually on the channel. Vic says, bye, to which I also say, bye. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com, and there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at both audioworm.rain-online.org and at Abaddon Productions. We'll see you on the next